Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, Twinkle's Class Act. Also, the V-Team takes a look at Ivey's calendar. And are polluters safe in Alabama?
Hey man, am I driving okay?
I think we're parked, man.
Not that kind of pollutant. The other kind. Yeah, that's it. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by the V-Team. Welcome all.
Good morning.
Hey,
Happy
great day.
fall.
Yes, Jack, it's been a little nipply outside.
Yes, it has.
What?
Yes, I can always tell. Tune in Tokyo.
You know, this week, something you rarely see, Jack, in politics anymore. Twinkle Cavanaugh, who ran a spirited race against Will Ainsworth, the lieutenant governor, she lost that race. However, this past week, she held a fundraiser for Will Ainsworth at her house. It was attended by over 200 people.
Yeah, it was a big deal, and it was a very kind gesture on her part. Twinkle has always had a good heart, and she's a good person, and she's also has enough political acumen to know that ending up after you lose, you're not bitter. You should reach out, and she did, and her credit, it was a great event.
Yeah, Susan, that's something rare though these
It's
days.
very rare, and I gotta hand it to Twinkle. She is a class act. She really is, and she's setting an example, I think, for everybody else. It's like, if you lose, don't go get in the corner and pout. For God's sake, we're adults here. Support other people around you that might have some ideals that you do, and do it with class.
Yes. Well, that's what she told me. She said, "Look, this is the way it should be. It's always been this way. We're supporting the person on the ticket." That's a great way to look at it.
It is a great way to look at it, and we also need to remember that they didn't have the smoothest of campaign either.
Oh no, it was a little bumpy.
So
there.
that really says even more that she would do this after
Yeah.
the campaign that they fought. So
Well, congratulations to both of them. They're both
Absolutely.
good folks, and they ran a spirited race, and that race is behind them. The governor's race, as spirited up a little bit, Chip.
bit.
I mean, there's a little name calling, a little mudslinging, a little accusation here and there.
I was beginning to think we were going to get all the way through it, and nobody was going to say a word.
Well, and the thing is,
It got close. What, 3 weeks now?
If you say, and these people, Kay Ivey's campaign people and her supporters are thin-skinned. Let's just face it. Like, they act like you threw dirt in Grandma's eye if you say anything. And Kay Ivey, and Jack can back me up on, is one of the rough and tumblest, hard-hitting politicians that the state's ever known.
She's old
tough.
school.
She's
She's
tough.
been in some tough races,
Yeah.
and she's beat some formidable opponents over
yeah.
the years.
Yeah.
She's not a newcomer, but like a lot of politicos, she has a thin skin, I think.
Yeah. Well, if you ever saw that move, the series Glow, they've got these grannies that are wrestlers. She could be one of those. She could be a granny wrestler. But this week, the Kay Ivey campaign accused Walt Maddox, Chip, of accepting money from George Soros. Now, unless you watch Fox News 24/7, most people don't know who George Soros is, but he's a big Democrat campaign donor. You want to break that down for us a little bit?
Yeah, pulling out the George Soros name is like throwing the devil into the mix.
Yeah.
It's like that's how you get the Republican base to come out and be mad about something. And they said that Walt Maddox took $200,000 from this set of chain PACs that are run by Mike Eccles over in Tuscaloosa. These are PACs like T-Town 2 PAC, Pride PAC, Leadership PAC, some other names. They said he took, money from George Soros. Well, that money came in on October 17th. We don't know where that money's gone yet, but what we do know is that Maddox took a big chunk of money from them. He took $600,000 from that set of PACs. But the interesting aspect is that Kay Ivey's campaign also took $100,000 in money from that same set of PACs that they're accusing him of taking Soros
Oh,
money
God
from.
forbid. Do you think George Soros is actually backing Kay Ivey, Susan?
Well,
looks
I
like
hope
it,
not,
if
but
this is how we're doing
it could be, it could be viewed that way.
Well, the thing we do know, Jack, is that unless they're accusing Mr. Eccles of a crime, all that money goes into the same pot.
Yeah, it's going in, you give $200,000 and they're divvied up to the various PACs, and those PACs give money out to candidates, and it's the same pool of money, basically. So while Maddox has not yet gotten the $200,000, Soros put $200,000 in those PACs. Now, to say that, he took the $200,000 from George Soros, kind of glass houses deal.
Yeah.
You're taking money from those same
They're not
PACs.
itemized. It's not
Right,
like there's a line
exactly.
item on the budget that says, well, George Soros gave us this money,
Well,
and we're
and-
giving this money to Walt Maddox.
Well,
that would be
because
illegal.
That's illegal. You can give money to a PAC with the kind of wink, wink, nod. But if you say, okay, I'm giving you PAC this money, and I want this money to go to this candidate, that's directing money, and that's wholly illegal.
Yeah, it's totally illegal. You can't do it. But it's great theater, right? It's great
It's
theater.
good theater,
you
and
know,
it's meat to the base.
Yeah,
who
it
probably.
I'm not sure I wouldn't have done that.
Well, of course you would, Jack.
I mean, George Soros is a bad name for Republicans.
Yeah, he is.
But you should at least check that you didn't take money from the same set of PACs first.
Yeah. Well,
Because that PAC also gave money to Troy King. It's also given money to Joe Siegelman. I mean, it gives money to a bunch of different people. Robert
Right.
Bentley took money from that
Yeah.
same set of PACs.
well,
Everybody takes money from those PACs. I mean, it's well known.
yeah, it is, and they as well they should. Money is the mother's milk of politics. You got an interesting article. We don't have much time. We got about a minute and a half. Where you said in a few races, the Democrats were actually raising Republicans
Yeah.
in donations. But I don't think it changes anything, but at least there's some glimmer of money out there.
Yeah, I mean, just to put something out there, the Republicans have way more cash on hand, and I
Right.
think that's what you're getting at. But in the first set of campaign finance reports that we got from October, we know that Joe Siegelman outraised Steve Marshall. We know that two of the other statewide races, Democrats also outraised. I think the state auditor outraised, the Democratic state auditor campaign candidate outraised Jim
Yeah,
Ziegler.
Jim Ziegler.
So, I mean, we're seeing that Democrats are getting more money, and they also have a lot more donors, too. I mean,
That was one of the interesting things.
Yeah.
If you look at Siegelman's donors, it was like how many?
like 200 and something
Right.
compared to less than 100, I think, for Marshall.
Yeah,
I
same
don't-
way with Kay Ivey.
Yeah, Maddox had about twice as many as Kay Ivey did.
But Jack, those numbers sadly do not translate into votes. do
No,
they?
basically you have two sets of donors: frugal donors who give if they think you need the money, and they don't. If they see you're 10 points ahead, there's no reason to give you money. Then there are loyal donors who are going to give you money no matter what, and some of them expect access at least. Even knowing you're going to win by 10 or 12 points, they're still going to give you money.
All right,
Also-
we're going to have to leave it right there. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back with more news and opinion.
He's a bald guy, and sometimes he kind of shouts when he talks.
I'm Will Ainsworth.
A small businessman who will grow 21st century jobs and will be a loud voice to help existing Alabama businesses.
I'm Will Ainsworth.
Ainsworth is the husband of a pre-K teacher. He'll expand voluntary pre-K programs and speak out for classroom technologies.
I'm Will Ainsworth.
Always bald, sometimes loud. Will Ainsworth will take his job seriously, not himself.
You'll never guess what 400,000 people in the U.S. were using when they crashed their cars last year. No, not this. This. Distracted driving will kill you. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
Hey, I'm Rick.
And I'm Bubba from the Rick and Bubba Show. And if you know anything about us, you know we like to have fun.
However, there's one thing that's no laughing matter. We believe that everyone should be registered to vote, and they should have a qualified government-issued photo ID.
In order to have your voice heard and your vote counted, you must be registered to vote and have a photo ID.
Join Bubba and me and register to vote, and let's work together to make Alabama all it can be.
2/3 of drivers who died in car crashes chose to ignore this warning. Seatbelts save lives. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
Welcome back to The Bee, the voice of Alabama politics. Susan, this week, after about 3 weeks of requesting it, APR received a copy of 3 weeks worth of Kay Ivey's calendars. And the reason we asked for those calendars back several months ago, well, at least back in August, I guess it was, there was a time period where you just didn't see much of Governor Kay Ivey, but she was saying that she was busy, and she couldn't debate Walt Maddox because she was doing the government's business. So we thought, well, hey, they keep an official calendar. Let's see what kind of business she was doing. So the calendar stretched over a 3-week period, and what we found out was a little less than overwhelming. I mean, she wasn't that busy.
Well, for about 3 weeks, she managed to be busy for about 60 hours total for a 3-week period.
So it's like 3 hours a day.
3 hours a day. There were, days and days where the pages were just blank, or she might have one 30-minute conference call from the governor's mansion. Apparently, a lot of the business gets done from the governor's mansion, according to this calendar. She doesn't spend a whole lot of time at the Capitol itself, but it was just kind of amazing that she's really not that busy, according to this calendar.
Well, I mean, Jack, the office of the governor of Alabama is not very strong anyway. I mean, does it matter that she's not running around like Robert Bentley or Bob, whatever that group's name was? Bob Riley.
I don't know. I mean, when you're in that position, a lot of it is ceremonial, and the office doesn't come with a lot of power and a lot of responsibility. But she really hasn't been visible. I don't want to get into the debate. At least I don't want to talk about the debate issue. She doesn't want to do them, and if I were running her campaign, I would tell her not to do it. But maybe you do expect a little bit more out of your governor, to be seen more. Mm-hmm. If nothing else, to just assure the public that everything is cool.
Well, and that's what people like about Kay Ivey, is that they like the no drama. Mm-hmm. They like that there's no scandal. But at least if you look at her calendar, the reason there's no drama and no scandal is because basically there's not a whole lot going on, Chip. I mean, there's no big meetings with some of the big power players. There's not, Bentley's schedule will always be full of these high-level meetings, and there's just none of that.
Yeah, I mean, we don't see really anything of note on there other than she's meeting with her staff, and she went to do one interview at the State House that took her 45 minutes to get there and 30 minutes to get to her Capitol
There's
office.
a lot of traffic on South Union Street.
Well, when you've got a tunnel that goes under South Union Street, it doesn't count.
You could be picking on Grandma.
I guess me just looking at the calendars, I guess there could be campaign things on there, but I don't remember there being a lot of campaign events during that time period, and I would assume that they would block out that time for something else on there. So
well, a lot of times when people want to give you money, you'll find another office away from the Capitol that's not on state property.
You mean like Bosch and Bingham?
Well, wherever, somewhere like that, and people come in and give you money, and you don't put that on the official governor's calendar because it's not state business. So.
Well, it just was interesting. I unlike Jack, I do see I agree with Jack that from a political standpoint, not debating Walt Maddox made sense, but from a let's be clear and transparent. Let's put my plan and your plan together, and let's see who has a better plan.
Yeah.
I don't think that was very good. One of the other things that Governor Ivey did this week is that she put a moratorium on the parole hearings. This is very different than a moratorium on any paroles. She's holding these up. Some people see this as a political consideration, Jack. However, there was a news report, several news reports that some violent criminals were being given early parole for good time served, good behavior.
Right.
And Kay Ivey got wind of it, and she and Steve Marshall went over there and kind of shut it down.
Well, Gerald Bailey, who's the DA in Montgomery County, made a big to-do about this, about violent offenders being let out, and then they go back and commit other crimes, and that is a concern, and I understand that. But it's really not the parole, the Board of Pardons and Paroles, that you have to fuss at. It's the state legislature for not allocating enough money for our prison system. Yeah. That's the bottom line. We're overcrowded. We got federal judge looking down, looking at us pretty closely, and if we don't do something, this is going to keep happening.
Susan, this is part of the plan, right?
I agree. One of the things that got brought up in this, and we've got these early release things that went through the legislature to try to, tamp down the overcrowding. And while that's worked, it's worked so well that all we have left are the highly violent offenders in there, and we're still overcrowded. So, like Jack said, this is. We're going to have to deal with the overcrowding. That's just part of it.
Well, there's only two ways to fix overcrowding. I mean, you can either how many people you're putting in or how many people you're letting out. I mean, and so they were choosing to let some folks out, right, Chip?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they were considering parole for 150 violent offenders is what has been reported. But you're having a parole hearing. You're not that doesn't mean that all 150 of them are going to be out.
No.
Right.
And I'm sure a bunch of them had different considerations. I'm sure some of them, it was not their time yet to be put on parole. But
well, I like Darrell Bailey. I think he's one of the good guys. I don't know enough about the 150. Again, it's just a moratorium on hearings.
Right.
And
early parole hearings.
Early parole hearings.
Yeah.
And again, if we're not going to build more prisons, we're either going to have to, stack them higher and deeper.
Yeah.
Which the federal government says we cannot do, or we're going to have to let some people out or keep some
There's
people
nowhere
from
else to
going
stack them. We've been in those prisons. You can't put a third bunk on top. It just won't work. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's already unsafe for the men and women who work in those prisons as correctional officers.
And the nonviolent people that are in prison with the violent
Well, let's
criminals.
face it, an executive order about prisons and prison population being issued in the middle of October before a general election might have a little smell of politics.
No,
Jack,
just a little
you're
bit.
so
It's a faint smell.
Yes, like poopery.
Yeah, that's right.
Again, we hear this all the time. Some idiot talked about that we had released some kind of September surprise. If we don't surprise you at least once a month, we're not doing our job.
Absolutely.
that's what the news is.
That's what gets us up every morning.
They must be colluding with the Maddox campaign. I'm like, we didn't collude with anybody. We didn't even collude with the Russians.
I know, I am shocked.
Well, we're going to have to leave it right there. You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back with more news. And Jack Campbell. Okay, Rick.
You'll never guess what 400,000 people in the U.S. were using when they crashed their cars last year. No, not this. This. Distracted driving will kill you. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
I am the proud mother of Ethan Everman. Ethan has autism, diagnosed when he was around 4. It was a really tough time for us. We went to go get speech therapy and ABA therapy and realized that none of it was covered, which was really amazing to us. Tom Watley decided that he needed to try to make this bill pass, and he did. And because of Tom, children now get the therapy that they need, and he was a voice for the children in Alabama who didn't have a voice.
2/3 of drivers who died in car crashes chose to ignore this warning. Seatbelts save lives. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. Chip, APR had a story this week in which we looked at 3M company out of Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing, I think it is. 3M, big company out of Minnesota. They have plants here all around the country. In Minnesota, the Attorney General there filed suit against them for polluting the rivers in Minnesota. 3M settled for $850 million. I think Michigan followed suit with the lawsuit. Alabama has rivers up near Decatur that have tested positives for the same type of pollutants that were found in Minnesota. And there are folks that are blaming this on 3M. The Attorney General, Steve Marshall, when asked about this, said that he had not been told anything by ADEM. The real problem is, though, a reporter in the Decatur-Huntsville area did a series of stories on this. When she asked Steve Marshall about it, he got a little indignant with her, and according to our sources, really fired back at this reporter for this television station, even to the point that her bosses thought that he was trying to push for her to be fired. But can you give us some background on the 3M thing and how journalists, punishing journalists is sort of this new thing we're getting into?
Yeah,
again.
somehow it's like you ask a question and somebody gets mad you ask the question. Yeah. And I don't know what they want them to do, but if that really is a big issue in Decatur. Now people are afraid to drink their tap water because they think it may be polluted. This company obviously has a track record of doing the same thing in other states, and Michigan's Republican governor was one of the ones who pushed for them to sue to get money to pay to clean up the water. Same thing in Minnesota, and Steve Marshall was like, well, the Alabama Department of Environmental Management didn't ask me to sue them, so I haven't done it.
God forbid you take initiative, right? that bunch over there doesn't do anything.
No, they don't. And this is a no-brainer. It's 3 other states that are suing. Why does he need permission from ADEM? We had a Republican governor that said they needed to sue. And I say, why can't they make some initiative? Of course, Alabama, we do love our polluters. And let's not forget Monsanto, the Roundup issues, the fact that you can't even plant a garden in Anniston, and nothing's really been done about that.
Well, our attorney generals like polluters. They write letters on their behalf.
Take money.
If you were waiting on ADEM to tell you to sue somebody about pollution, you'd be dead by the time anybody.
Well, and I think the thing that troubled me, you can look at all this. The thing that troubled me, Jack, is that this woman who is obviously a hardworking journalist felt that her job was threatened, that she got total pushback from the Attorney General's office. When we're not living in Saudi Arabia, we are not living in Stalinist Russia. Journalists have a right to ask questions.
We know how it's like when people want to get you fired, don't we?
Yeah.
Quite well.
Yeah, I had a former Speaker of the House that tried to put my political consulting business out of business.
Yeah.
I understand that, but I'm not here to defend Steve Marshall, but maybe when the reporter got to him, it was really the first time he had really heard that it was an issue. Maybe I'm being naive here, but he may not have been aware of it. He hadn't been AG that long. But now that he knows about it, let's be fair and see if he does do something about it.
I think that's fair, but she asked him about it back in July.
Okay.
And it's spiraled since then.
Yeah.
And he still hasn't done anything.
Well, and she interviewed Joseph Siegelman, and he was on her show, and she talked about that. And that didn't make him happy either. But anyway, we'll move on.
I think that's a fair question to ask an attorney general, and also to ask an attorney general candidate who's running against him. He ought to answer it. Well, if I have evidence, I intend to do this.
Yeah, and Governor Ivey was asked about it, and she said she would look at it, that she would she would look at it.
I got to make one more little point here. We're not just talking about drinking water here. Okay, they can drink bottled water, whatever. We're talking about bathing children in tap water that's been polluted. You know, adults taking baths, cooking with this water. It's a bigger issue than just drinking water.
Water shouldn't be a political issue. I mean, it really shouldn't. Clean water should just be, you know, I mean, what was that? Whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting over. But those days are kind of over, right, Jack?
I don't know. I fought over whiskey a million times.
Well, I don't want to get all kumbaya here, but the school safety the school safety advisory committee that was put together by Speaker Mac McCutcheon, they had their first meeting this past week. And Speaker McCutcheon wants to come up with some reasonable solutions to keep our schools safe.
Right. Well, I mean, I agree. I think this is a good issue because of all the problems we've seen in public schools across the country. And I think it's good the Speaker wants to take the bull by the horns. I know Ainsworth had a bill during the last session about this issue. So hopefully they'll be methodical and take a serious look at it and see what can be done.
Yeah, I have no idea how much time is left on the clock, but I think it's a good idea that McCutcheon has taken a more
one of the things I do
approach.
love about Mac McCutcheon is he is very methodical. He takes things from a broad view. He doesn't get excited about anything or put anything in a rush, which, you know, but as Bill, I always tell you, you can have it right or you can have it now. You can't have it right now.
Right.
And I think that's his approach to this, which is, I think, a very good approach.
He has a record of being a mediator, too, because back in the spring, all those bills were coming through. It wasn't just Ainsworth bill, but it was also all the Democrats' bills as well, and he kind of served as a mediator, and I think both sides really felt like he was listening.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing because he and Anthony Daniels, who's the minority leader, the Democrats' minority leader in the House, they do get along. They do have a conversation from time to time. So that's a good thing. Chip, we hear about this giant blue wave or medium blue wave or kind of a blue wave of some kind. It is not going to crash on the shores of Alabama, I don't think, anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, all of the Republican incumbents are far outracing their Democratic challengers in the congressional races. I can't look at any of those congressional districts and see one where a Democrat could win. I think the most interesting one is maybe Mallory Hagan in the 3rd district, but there's almost no chance that she wins.
No, I mean, it's just like, it doesn't exist, does it, Susan?
No, it's not here. It may be nationally, but not here in Alabama.
Well, you know, this is solid Trump country. I think it's going to be Republican for as long as we can
For a good while, as Emory Farmer would say, I don't agree and enter into an exercise in futility. So that's what some of these Democrat campaigns are.
Yeah, they are.
But God love them for running.
Yeah,
absolutely.
They've mounted some good candidates this time. I'd like to see a good scrappy fight, but we're going to have to leave it right there. You've been watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. You watch us because we watch them.